All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 3rd meeting of the Village of New Paltz Planning Board. Tonight we have a short agenda, some administrative business, followed by one public hearing and a few application reviews. To start with, did everyone get a chance to review the meeting minutes from our May 20th meeting? Any changes? If not, could I get a motion to approve the May 20th meeting minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, do we have any updates from our village board and Ulster County Planning Board liaison?
Good evening.
Hello.
How are you? I have nothing to report. Ulster County Planning Board meets tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. I came up to see if you have any questions for me. Sorry,
Regarding the,
yeah, anything.
no, I don't think so. When is the primary elections coming up?
Yeah,
Right?
early voting starts June 13th, and you can vote at the community center until the 22nd, I believe, and then the 25th is the 24th is the primary. Yeah, 24th is the primary, and there's voting locations in the village, so that's coming up, so keep an eye on that. Excellent.
And the voting on the merger is gonna take place when? Is that in?
We're in discussions, very early rediscussions of the whole plan. We have shifted a bit to more of a consolidation plan. And that's in very early days of getting there. So there won't
So
be,
not-
there won't be anything on the November.
No
ballot.
partisan.
Right, no doubt.
No dissolution.
Okay.
Is it?
That's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks for coming.
Were there any updates from the environmental policy board?
No, we just meet once a month.
Okay, thank you. And updates from our director of planning and zoning?
Yeah, the village board and the town board are holding a joint public hearing, this Thursday night, 7 p.m. On the topic of the annexation of the, New Paltz Apartments properties to the village. So part of the process is both boards were petitioned by the applicant. Public hearing is required, and that joint hearing will be at the, town, where they meet at the, I guess it's at the courthouse, 7 p.m. Thursday night.
That's right, the courthouse. It's over at the. What do you call that now? It's not the new fire station. or-
No, it's the next building,
It's the next
so
building
there's, on North Platte Corners Road. So 7 p.m. Thursday night. That's all I have.
Great. Were there any other updates from the board items to discuss? If not, I'd like to move on to public comment. Is anyone here tonight that would like to make a public comment about board business? Okay. Anyone online? All right, in that case, let's move on to our first public hearing. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing for PB 2509, 145 Chestnut?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Yes, would you like to make a public comment or?
Well, I'm representing the applicant. We thought maybe we could present the project so that members of the public could hear about it before they comment.
Let's hold off on
Sure.
that for now. Is there anyone here in person that would like to make a public comment? Anyone online?
I think all
Yes.
the people online are with applicants.
Okay. Okay, given that there are no public comments, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for PB 2509.
So.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so,
Zach, just a quick note, this is on the county planning board agenda for tomorrow night.
yes.
So I just want to throw that to you about that, so.
Um, So to begin, let's have the first applicant, PB 2509 and 45 North Chestnut. Please come up. Are there any changes at all since we saw you last?
Just a few updates that we have based on questions that the board had at the last meeting. So for the record, Charlie Gottlieb with Whiteman, Osterman and Hannah, Land Use Council for 145 North Chestnut Owner LLC. Here with Ken Casamento from LRC Group, who's our project engineer. Ken will walk you through some of the changes, but if you recall, we're here for an amended site plan for a project previously approved and under construction, mainly to allow for joint access to the project to the north, the inclusion of a dumpster enclosure, and also the addition of one residential unit, which will be a 2-bedroom unit. The board at the last meeting asked for floor plans, so you could see where that new unit is going. So we provided that to the board. Again, the new unit is not facing the frontage along North Chestnut Streets. It is replacing an area that previously was amenity space. That amenity space is now moving over there where there was commercial space. So we are having a reduction of commercial space from originally approved 7,219 square feet to now 5,782 square feet. That was really some of the main comments. All units are handicap accessible.
On the ground floor.
On the ground, well, throughout the building, actually.
Oh, better. Okay.
So the entirety of the project is ADA accessible.
Correct.
So there's an elevator. Let's see.
We also
Okay.
provided some specifications on the materials for the dumpster enclosure, with our recent submission.
Okay. Well, as Mike said, we are still waiting to hear back from the Ulster County Planning Board. But I think that given we're all pretty comfortable with this, we can authorize a resolution of approval tonight, pending those, those comments. Are there any other questions from the board? Okay. In that case, could I get a motion to authorize our attorney to draft a resolution of approval for PB 2509?
So. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Steve, thank you very much. Let's see.
Okay, you want to just give me those, and then I'll have all 3 copies, see the rest, unless the county knows something changed. Yeah. Thank you.
Next, we have PB 25-10, 29 South Chestnut. Is. Right, were you able to review the resolution already? Yeah. Everything looks good to you? Yeah. Okay, well, this is again just for an amendment to an approved site plan for brewery. Applicant intends to construct a 115 square foot addition to expand the existing brewery. There was only one special condition on this resolution of approval. And that is number 1, all the conditions of the previous approval for application PB 22-20 are incorporated herein by reference and remain in full force. If there are no questions from the board, I'd like to get a motion to approve the resolution approval for PB 25-10.
So moved. Second.
Could we have a roll call vote for that, please?
Certainly. Rachel?
Aye.
Vicky?
Aye.
Rich? Zach?
Aye. Great, so we will sign that and get that to you soon.
Thanks. See you guys.
Good night. Lastly, PB 2407, 147, 149, and 151, motion chestnuts.
Hello, I'm really flying along. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Dale Palmer, law firm of Cuddy and Cater on behalf of the applicant. Tonight I am joined by Mike Bodendorf of Hudson Land Design. The Zoom world, although not showing on your screen, although we do have Amy, our project architect, and then hidden somewhere back there is Stark Hip, who's our traffic consultant. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we are here before you for our continued site plan, lot merger, subdivision review, and as well as for special permit approvals. As we discussed at our May 20th meeting, we did meet again with the DRB back on May 15th, following their May 12th meeting. As we detailed in our May 28th submission, we did address some additional changes to the plans based on comments from you all, and of course from the DRB. We did increase year-round landscaping around the western border of the property. We did provide a rendering of the north facade, and then we also updated the building materials based on comments and discussions we had with the DRB. Just some additional updates we noted in our correspondence that the Wallkill Valley Land Trust did provide their approval for our bridge and connection to the trail. And then, as you all prepared a draft of the approval resolution, we did have a chance only recently to provide comments to council, just based on some general, questions and comments that we had. But other than that, from our side, we're certainly here to address any other questions or comments you might all have for us, or, to look through the resolution as it may be. And that's it for us.
Thank you. So it's just sort of going back through the most recent submission. Were there any new documents, like I guess the landscape plan changed a little bit?
Yeah, mildly, we just added some landscaping along the property boundary.
Right. And these renderings and elevations, are those?
Correct, that's just a rendering of the north facade. Yeah, and we can bring those up. Amy, do you want to bring up the rendering, please?
Zach, those were the ones, excuse me, that at the last meeting, they verbally spoke about and they showed them, but they hadn't actually submitted them. So these submittals are what you saw last meeting,
Okay, understood.
I believe. I'm wrong, let me know, but that's what I believe.
I had a couple of questions
Sure.
about the resolution. The first one had to do with the trees that you're planning to plant across the street. There was some language in there that said something about, payment, paying and we
Yes.
were putting those there. And I feel like that's not really a substitute because the trees themselves aren't very expensive. They're great trees, but they're only like between the Fuji green giants they're only $20 a piece. The other trees are not expensive. It's the maintenance of the trees.
Mhm.
They have to be tended to for at least 3 years before they can actually take root and grow. And I feel that it's very important to have that kind of a shield because the neighbors across the street are not used to having these gigantic buildings across the street. And I think it's great. I thought the choice of trees was really good, but I'm worried about, you can't just say, okay, well, we're gonna give you a couple $100 and we aren't gonna plant the trees. I feel like it's worth a lot more than the trees themselves because of the maintenance and the tending that they need to get started.
And if I may, just to respond to that, I think we're open to installing it. We've proposed that. We've spoken with the neighbors when they came to the public hearing and thereafter. So that really is just included to the extent that they, for some reason, decide, you know what, we don't want that, right? It's their privacy, it's their, so that's just an alternative for them.
If they decide they don't want the trees, you're gonna
Yes.
pay for the trees?
Well, I mean, it ultimately would enable them to install, the intent is to provide a privacy screening for them, not for the project.
Right.
So it's, but we can't force them to put in the improvements that they've otherwise agreed to. So I guess it's just a mechanism that we've included. We can certainly remove that, but ultimately we're just trying to find another way that maybe they have a planting plan or a landscaping plan they're trying to do on their property. Maybe they want to build something else, and we're just giving an opportunity. So we're offering either way, to install them or to provide them the cost that would otherwise be to install them.
Okay, so
Themselves.
the language should just be altered to reflect that, the reason
Okay.
for why you wouldn't install them.
Understood.
If for some reason the people decide they don't want them anymore.
Typically, just for benefit of the board and the public, I mean, what would happen sometimes if it's the private developer that is doing that work, they may need a temporary access or construction agreement, for example, just for liabilities and other purposes. So we'd probably even, if we are installing it versus providing them the funding associated with that, then we would have to negotiate a temporary agreement to come in and do it for the benefit. But we've offered either way to address that. But we can clarify, I think that can be clarified in the resolution.
And then I had a question about, the language, around the affordable housing. And that somehow there was language in there that said that, there would be some kind of a break given on the rec fee because of the affordable housing, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know if you could clarify that for me, please.
I defer to, I think, Emily and council.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's from the code. I believe in the code there is a calculation for the rec fee that considers affordable housing. Mike, do you have that in front of you? Or I can look at it.
I don't have it in front of me, I can pull it up.
I actually think it's possible the affordable units are exempt from the rec fee.
That may
So-
be correct.
No, actually, now I understand, the rec fee is, no, they're 50%.
50%.
Oh,
So the affordable housing units, the fee that the village board has set per unit for the recreation fees. The affordable housing units, because they're bringing in less revenue than or at least that's my guess of why it is the village board has set it at 50%.
I see.
So instead of 100%, the developer pays 50%.
I see. So the rec fee is collected by unit.
Yes.
I see.
By unit and also by type of unit. Different units have different recreation fees. And it's based on square footage. As well as the type of unit.
I was also.
And once we're completed, I'll calculate what that recreation fee is. And before a certificate, before a building permit is issued, the village will collect that recreation fee.
And I was also unsuccessful in arguing that the rail trail connection be considered as part for reduction, so I was told politely, good try.
Yeah, no, because there's gonna be so many more. If you've ever waited in line on a weekend to get into one of the
Of course.
parks with a few hundred more
I have.
people, it's not gonna.
And Mohawk just got number 2 in the country for
Yeah,
hiking trails.
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
So
Number
whatever.
one in the state for users.
Nice.
So, the other question had to do with the DEC, wetlands approval. So they have not yet, inspected the property.
Yes, they have.
They have.
Yes.
They just haven't responded
They,
yet.
yes, so there's wetlands on site. They've accepted those boundaries, we're going through the permitting process with them.
Okay, so you're just waiting for their.
Yeah, we're just waiting for their first response, whether that's do something here or, show me more information here. We just haven't gotten that first response yet.
Okay,
And typically the permitting, even if it were a different level of DEC or stormwater or other permitting will come post approval as a condition thereof.
okay. More questions. I don't know.
If I may, I do have a question just as an applicant since we were talking about the recreation fees. I know the code, at least at present, provides that the recreation fee is submitted prior to issuance or prior to signing of the site plans. Has there been other instances, and it may be a village board question more than a planning board question? If not most, I'll say most municipalities, typically a recreation fee will be due and payable at time of the CO. And it's usually related to the then in place, so it's sort of a risk to an applicant, but also could be, a benefit or a stick to try and encourage them to pay earlier than later, but then available recreation fees set by your fee schedule, because each year the village's fee schedule will change. Has there been any other instance where an applicant has requested that the recreation fee be payable at CO, at time of CO, rather than prior to signing of the plan, and maybe that's a question I can have offline with Mike or
Yeah.
others.
don't
I
know.
believe we've always done, before the building permit, we collect the rec fee.
Okay. Understood.
Actually, I think Emily is before the signature on the site plan.
Oh, okay,
That's what
That's for the
was for
code.
the other project.
Right.
okay.
I'm looking at the code real quick to just see.
It's as code written says prior to site plan.
It's also been the case, my understanding, that any negotiation of the rec fee in terms of the fee
Yeah.
level or terms is done with the board of trustees.
Yeah. Makes sense.
We just make the determination through that logic that is required.
Well, the
Understood.
way that the resolution is drafted right now is prior to issuance of a building permit, and I thought that's what we had done before, but if that doesn't come out in code.
I will double check that.
Either way,
Okay, check
if
it.
it's different than what is in the code, will be a village trustee question.
Can I ask a couple questions, Zach?
Yeah, go for it.
One is, just an area that's not included in the document in the findings, and it's possible that it's not included because it's intentionally not able to be considered, but we had extensive conversations with regard to traffic, and in particular, two issues, the reduction of the speed limit at the earlier northern boundary to 30 miles an hour, and how that was really key component to the safety and safety of the project. And also the idea that the reconfiguration of the light at 299 and 32 made for a much more favorable traffic pattern at that intersection, which happens to be a very challenging intersection by the traffic study. I recognize that we're approving a site plan under the current conditions, and that there's currently no stipulation that says the state has to do those things, and we can't control whether the state decides to do those things. But I thought that maybe there's no reference of it whatsoever. After all the discussion we had and the advocacy we all agreed to do together about it, it might make it such that it's not memorialized at all, and therefore maybe just could be forgotten or ignored, and I thought it was too critical to leave out.
Rich, I do think that we captured that in the neg deck, but I agree that it would make sense to put it into the findings here as well. And as you could tell, there's a lot of material that went into this document. So I'm really glad that you all read it. And if there are things that we need to add, this is the opportunity to do that.
So in the front, the appendix or the number of documents referenced is one of those is obviously the write-up from the neg deck, and you're saying that that's outlined in there. That could be adequate as reference. I just thought it was critical enough to have it in the findings.
Sure.
Thanks.
It's better.
For the board, I just found the code, and it says, paid prior to the signing of the plat by the planning board officers, so.
Yep.
Prior to signature of site plan.
I have two more questions.
Sure, we just was wondering where in the findings you were thinking of that discussion would go. Is there a part that deals with?
There actually is no traffic section currently, so we'd probably add a traffic section and say the board evaluated traffic impact.
There's one sentence that says no unreasonable interference with traffic on surrounding seats, but yeah, maybe that should be expanded on.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Thanks. One of them is, an explanation, maybe a technicality, the specific conditions, number 11, around the land bank. So, I know that we talked about how there are probably models for what could be considered documented evidence, which is how it's worded in the thing. So I'm fine just leaving it documented evidence and leaving it up to the building department to figure out what that looks like. But is it correct, or is it an error that it takes, that if the building department determines it's needed, if they get 4 months, but if the applicant determines it, they get 6 months? Is that correct, that it's 2 different periods of time, or is it inconsistent?
So it did say six, I think that when the applicant drafted it, they asked for a 6 month period either way. And I think that our staff had suggested a shorter time if if the village requires it. But I didn't think we cared if they took 6 months if they requested it. So that's why they're two different numbers, but we can change it.
We also talked about how, like, you know, with timing of asphalt and winter and things like that, that 4 months might not be reasonable. We just don't want to set up a situation where they could have a violation. It may not be fair. I know that Terry had mentioned, I think Terry was kind of, I don't remember exactly how he was swayed, but I thought we agreed maybe that 6 months was more reasonable.
The 6 month was what the applicant suggested last meeting.
I agree with that, again, based on the weather, like if you make a determination in November, it's very challenging to do.
At least get things paid, that's for sure. Yeah. So is that okay if we just make it consistent 6 months for both references?
That's fine, yeah.
And the last thing, well, actually, I'm sorry, two more things. One is, point 16, it says the need for a left turn ingress to the project shall be monitored. Can I be reminded what a left turn ingress is referring to? Is that preventing a left turn from the?
Stark was ready to address this because that was Stark's comment. Stark, are you even on the Zoom here?
No, I'm here. I'm just having some trouble with my camera.
Okay.
For reference, that comment came directly from the Ulster County Planning Board, and
That's
I
correct.
believe it was a required modification. So if we are to not use that modification, we would need to override their requirement. But I'll let you go ahead and explain it.
No, my interpretation of the comment from the Ulster County Planning Board was in regards to an exclusive left turn lane, even though they just say left turn ingress, because we are proposing left turn ingress. We have always proposed a left turn ingress for the driveways. At this point, the shared access is going through the review process with the New York State DOT, which has jurisdiction of the roadway, would make the determination on whether a left turn lane, exclusive left turn lane is required for the entrances. So that's our understanding of the comment, and that it would have to be reviewed and approved by the DOT for that accommodation on the roadway.
So it's not whether a left turn ingress is allowed, it's whether you need to install a new lane.
A dedicated
left turn.
Yeah.
Ingress.
Yeah, I think it had to do with the wording of the comment. Is to say left turn ingress. There's always been left turn ingress.
So maybe we can just clarify that if warranted, shall install and implement the exclusive left turn or designated left turn ingress.
Yeah, but I thought we had worked on some language that would say that if it was permitted or if it was requested by the New York State DOT, it would be implemented.
Changes today, and one of those in that section was if the DOT approves it, because ultimately the DOT has to approve it.
Right, we said it permitted to do so by the DOT and other relevant parties with approval or consent authority who may be impacted, i.e. property owner to the south.
Yes. And that, yes.
And that would be for potentially both entrances?
No,
That's
I think that the intent would be for the shared access that's between the two properties, since that would carry the lion's share of left turns into the sites.
The other item for the DOT comment while we're talking about it is the bus pickup drop-off location. Do we have an answer on that?
Yes. So we've been coordinating with Ulster County Area Transit. I had exchanged some emails with them earlier today with the director, Tony Rosser, and their senior transportation engineer. They provided some guidance on the process, but ultimately we're still determining where that location is gonna be. I don't think we could just point to a spot on the site and put it there. We're probably gonna need to look at demand along the network. When you consider that there's these 3 other developments coming on board, and identify a location that best suits all 3 projects. Given that we're the most northern one, it could be something more centrally located. But we're still working through that process. I think what's important to note is that it's not going to be on the property. It would be somewhere within the right of way.
Okay, does there need to be any note of that in the findings or conditions, Emily?
Yeah, yes. I guess I'm a little confused because I thought that the system was sort of like people can flag down the bus at any location. So are they going to be satisfied with one shared location for all these projects?
Emily,
I
the
think-
way, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Mike. Because I
So
was
the
actually
way-
deferred to you.
The way UCAT works is they have some dedicated spots where they stop to pick up people, but they still operate on the flag system. But if they have and this is a guess on my part, and I can confirm this tomorrow, but if they have a spot that's designated just, maybe 50 or 100 yards down the road, they probably will put up signage and direct people to go to that site rather than just flag it down. But, on the normal roadway where they're not designated spaces to stop, anybody can flag the bus down at any spot.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're satisfying what the county asked for.
It
So
will definitely be on the roadway, it won't be, on property, because they will not leave the roadway and go into the site to pick up.
right, I just wondered if it was a little tricky because of the street parking and the bike lane and everything. But maybe we can,
Stark's gonna weigh in on that. That's a good point, Emily, because that relates to our neighbors to the south. I mean,
Yeah.
do you wanna tie into that, Stark? Cause that's kind of your bailiwick.
Yeah, that was what I was kind of alluding to with an optimal location for the bus stop. Given that 145 just to the south of us does not have on-street parking, it could be a more optimal location for a bus stop, a designated bus stop. I understand that the bus routes operate on a flag system, but they'll also have what are called they're called like time stops, which are dedicated bus stop areas. One is over you've seen one at Zero Place where they have a shelter and actual signage for it.
okay, well, we can work together on how to word that to make sure we have a check that it's satisfied. I guess we just have to make sure that UCAT is satisfied before signing the plan.
And I can check with the county planning board tomorrow, or with the planning director, what language would achieve what they're trying to get out of the decision.
Okay, Rich, did you have another?
I have one more thing that's just already flagged in the document, I just want to make sure we, included about it. It feels a little petty, but it's that question of whether the code around sound or, audio on the roof is consistent with what it seems like maybe the applicant proposed. So the applicant proposed that they won't have amplified music for a dance party, but they might have light music for a yoga group. Whereas the code says that you can't have amplified.
It's all
music.
gone. Yeah, it was all removed, right?
Rich, I'm sorry to interrupt. That suggested language came from the Zero Place. It wasn't from this applicant, I don't believe.
Okay.
So what we were trying to do was match what had been approved for Zero Place. But Mike, and I'm sorry, my note wasn't clear, but my concern was that what appears to have been approved for Zero Place may not match
Yeah.
what's in the code right now. Yeah.
So, yep. Yeah, so I don't really follow.
Yeah, we just accepted a condition of no amplified music is
Great.
permitted.
That's the code, so that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, thank you. That's all the.
And I think even Emily added all requirements of the village code will be in here too, so I think we doubled it.
Yeah. That, you know, and so then, you're comfortable with all of the.
Yoga's allowed.
Operation and. Quiet.
Just
Acoustic yoga.
hard to do hot yoga unless it's like 9 AM.
Um. And all the other specific conditions under 17 are acceptable to the applicant.
We only had very minor other I mean, Emily, to the extent we don't, do you want us to walk through like some of the various, I mean, we made some general notes. For example, we are proposing a lot merger or subdivision, but your code was changed during our review. We're staying a subdivision. We're not becoming a administrative subdivision. But similar to Richard's comment about incorporating traffic, I don't know if you want to incorporate a reference that while it's essentially not required, the applicant is completing a subdivision. Some of these are more like nuanced, very simple. For example, another comment tonight about the traffic, there's no reference in this document, for example, other than that we need to provide council's office with a copy of our shared access agreement that we already have signed and reported with the neighbors. So those kind of references there, but we don't have any reference in this document that we actually have a shared driveway. I mean, I know it's all in the neg deck, it's all accounted for, so we have some very limited
Yep.
points, but we can work with Emily offline to the effect of those inclusions. They're not material to the document, but they go again to the extensive discussions that you all had about this project and what made it work, 'cause that reduced our variances, that changed 2 entrances, that allowed for more parking. There's a lot of kind of things that went into that, but there really isn't much more that we have other than
Okay, I was specifically asking about the roof deck.
oh, sorry,
on the-
didn't know.
Number 17.
All set, sorry.
Okay.
Emily, is there any reason we shouldn't just approve it as a lot improvement rather than a subdivision? I understand they applied for a subdivision, but. Or do we just follow through with the subdivision even though it's exempt under the code?
I mean, we already went through with the public hearing and everything. It seems like we would just complete that process, but we could do it either
That's
way.
a fine answer. I have no, that's fine.
Sorry, Dan, I have one more question.
Yeah,
Since the project is dependent on the improvements needed to the pump or the replacement of the pump, and I see that the agreement that will be signed with reference. Is there any delivery expectations or commitments from the village on timeline and delivery of that? In that agreement, in other words, if the village just like can't get around to it, you can't build your building. Is there some covenants that go both directions on that?
We haven't finished drafting an agreement as a sort of a condition. We're basically utilizing the same agreement that our neighbors just did as sort of a form base for it.
We've never read it, but I'm
Fair enough.
curious.
Well, the other agreements that the direct answer to your question is no, I don't think there's any commitment on the village's end, but I will note that the other agreement that we drafted with the other applicants it contemplated the option that they might do the work versus pay for the village to do it. So that might give them a little more control as to moving it forward.
But the other 2 applicants have made the payment, just.
Oh, okay.
the
Never
board
mind then.
knows.
And they're building, or built.
The payment was required before we could issue a building permit according to the language, so. They both,
Did they each pay half? So they each.
no, they each paid a third, and originally the village was paying the third. And instead now this project is paying the third.
And what if it runs over? It's supposed to be what, $300,000?
I don't remember the exact number, but it's.
Charlotte, pick it up.
It's been,
419,000.
yeah,
Oh, and but then they, even if all 3 wasn't the upper limit like just over 100,000 that you said you would pay?
There is an upper limit, and that was all resolved through the village engineer and the DPW superintendent. The dollar amount for it, for the project.
Yep.
For what was being required. So I'm guessing, there was an upper limit, and both applicants have paid the upper limit so far. And then the new applicant here will pay the remaining third. But the dollar amount was calculated by the village engineer.
So there, I don't know, it's not really, I guess, the board's, it's my concern, but maybe it's nothing we can do about it at the board, which is that there's a scenario where the buildings that are currently under construction could actually be ready for occupancy, but unable to occupy because of the work that needs to be completed. Why can't I try to know?
Sorry. I believe that once the third payment is made, the villages, the highway, or the DPW superintendent has every intention of doing it immediately. So,
May I ask a question about one of the edits that that the applicant's team had proposed? I just want to make sure we're clear on our expectation for the parking. So on number 12, so number 11 says that at any time the building inspector can require those land bank spaces to be put into use. But then number 12 is a condition that we've been using on the other projects that have these previously approved uses. And it says that before any of those new uses is installed, the applicant shall demonstrate that the parking is adequate. And I left that in there on purpose because I think we wanted to have that check before any of the new commercial uses go in to make sure that the parking is adequate. But the edit that's suggested is that would only be if it's for some other use, not one of the pre-approved ones. I'm just wondering what the board's wish is there as far as, do we want to check on the parking situation before each new commercial use goes in?
Our thought was to try, and just for the benefit of the board, our thought was that going through the special permit review for each of those specific uses was to sort of kind of put to bed that concern, and I think that's why we had to increase the amount of parking, reduce the land, or sort of add for additional parking and additional land banking. So I think that was why we went through that exercise, but we thought that was hopefully to address those. So if those are already sort of handled in this approval, then we wouldn't have another sort of discretion or change of review. What if there's a change of code or other criteria? We're just trying to keep it, at least in what's approved, I'd say.
I guess maybe what I was, maybe it needs to just be reworded, because my thought was that it should trigger an evaluation of whether those land bank spaces are needed. And I guess that would be up to the building inspector anyway.
That
was the discussion the board had last meeting.
Okay.
Was that as the
That makes sense.
commercial uses are, reach out for a permit from the building department. Even the ones that are pre-approved will still have to go through permit process with the board.
Could that, maybe I made a suggestion, if I may, that maybe that just be included in the land banked, like maybe that just gets merged into number 11, so that it's, we know that's land, yeah.
Because that's what we had discussed last meeting, if I remember correctly, and I was just doing the minutes today.
That makes a lot more sense.
Thank you.
But so that means that even one of these approved uses, if a bakery comes in, they're gonna have to come before the planning board?
No.
No.
The building inspector will review the parking that's specifically required for that type of business. And
Yeah.
see if the land bank spaces need to be looked at.
Yeah,
And it would just be
But they
another
won't.
checkbox on his part
yeah,
as he gets a permit for an occupancy, he will make sure that there's enough parking for the actual use that is applied for.
Great.
At least that's the way I understood what we said last week.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that makes sense. Emily, were there any other sections of the findings that you wanted the board to look through or give input on?
I guess really just anything that you thought we should expand on, or any details we should add. Lori spent a lot of time on it. Lori, do you have any areas you wanted to ask for input on?
I don't think so.
All right.
Very thorough.
Sarah, I have a question for you, and we may have, do we have the letter of no impact from SHPO?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's noted in here, so I
Okay,
think we
I'll go
have,
back through the files.
we'll get it to you then.
I just saw the ad today, so,
Yeah, that was the fastest no impact letter in my career.
wow.
I was very shocked. I had constantly, but we'll leave it at that. Yes, it's in the file.
So I think our next step would be that Lori and I will take these notes back and edit it and send it around to everyone one more time before the next meeting. I don't want to cut off the discussion, but just I think that's what our expectation would be.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think all my questions have been answered. So. Yeah, look forward to seeing the final version, hopefully final version. And I think that would be all for tonight. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. All right, and may I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.